Hello there. Hello, everyone. Hello, Evelyn and Mary and Ali and several other names were there before I sat down. I'm so sorry about yesterday. I am in the stage of doing jury service when they pick the jury. I've never done jury service before. I've always felt a bit guilty about that. So this time, when I got called, it just so happens that I was able to go down. So I went down, and it was very long and laborious. But the big thing was it's supposed to end at 4, but it didn't end till 4:30. 4 would give me enough time to get home by 5 and do this very important part of every day. But it didn't end until 4:30, and so therefore I was not going to be able to do it. So I do apologize for saying that I would and then not being able to. Now, I am in danger, it seems to me, of being picked for this jury. It's not going to be a long trial, however, fortunately. So it might be that next week I get into the similar type of situation. I will ask the judge, he said 4 o'clock and then we weren't let out until 4:30. So I will ask, but I wonder with you guys, if I say I'm going to do it and then I put out a last minute thing like yesterday, whether that's okay or whether you'd rather I say I wasn't going to do it. Because then I suppose people will make plans or whatever. My feeling is that as soon as we get past this little difficult bit that we had to do, which we are basically past now, that we will get let out when the judge says we're going to get let out. Long-winded way of saying, I think what I'm going to do is say I'll be reading on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. But keep your eyes out for something that comes saying, I'm not going to be home in time. Or potentially I might say, I'm going to start at 5:10 rather than 5. So sorry about all the admin at the beginning, but that's the way we're going to handle it next week, the jury service week. And please let me know in the little comments if the way I sent that message works for everyone, or were there people trying to get on and not knowing what's going on. I hope that worked. If it didn't, I'm sorry. This is Fireside Reading. I'm Gildart, and every day we sit in front of the fire together and we read a little bit of a lovely old book. And currently we're reading The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins, which I am thoroughly enjoying. And the way this book is written is that there was the first epoch, he called it, and that was writings by Walter Hartwright, Mr. Gilmore, and Marion Holcomb. And now we're going into the second epoch. The first epoch ended with the tragedy of beautiful Laura marrying the dastardly Sir Percival Glyde and not even having a look in for poor Walter, who's gone off exploring around the world to help mend his broken heart. So that's where we're at. This is reading 25, but then it says chapter 1. Well, it's the first chapter of the second epoch. You all know about this by now. Welcome to a fireside reading of The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. The second epoch, the story continued by Marion Holcomb. Chapter 1. Blackwater Park, Hampshire. June the 11th, 1850. 6 months to look back on. 6 long, lonely months since Laura and I last saw each other. How many days have I still to wait? Only one. Tomorrow, the 12th, the travellers return to England. I can hardly realize my own happiness. I can hardly believe that the next 24 hours will complete the last day of separation between Laura and me. She and her husband have been in Italy all the winter, and afterwards in the Tyrol. They come back accompanied by Count Fosco and his wife, who propose to settle somewhere in the neighbourhood of London, and who have engaged to stay at Blackwater Park for the summer months before deciding on a place of residence. So long as Laura returns, no matter who returns with her. Sir Percival may fill the house from floor to ceiling if he likes, on condition that his wife and I inhabit it together. Meanwhile, here I am, established at Blackwater Park, the ancient and interesting seat, as the county history obligingly informs me, of Sir Percival Glyde, Bart, and the future abiding place, as I may now venture to add on my account, of plain Marian Holcombe, spinster, now settled in a snug little sitting-room with a cup of tea by her side, and all her earthly possessions ranged round her in 3 boxes and a bag. I left Limmeridge yesterday, having received Laura's delightful letter from Paris the day before. I had been previously uncertain whether I was to meet them in London or in Hampshire, but this last letter informed me that Sir Percival proposed to land at Southampton and to travel straight on to his country house. He has spent so much money abroad that he has none left to defray the expenses of living in London for the remainder of the season, and he is economically resolved to pass the summer and autumn quietly at Blackwater. Laura has had more than enough of excitement and change of scene, and is pleased at the prospect of country tranquillity and retirement, which her husband's prudence provides for her. As for me, I am ready to be happy anywhere in her society. We are all, therefore, well contented in our various ways, to begin with. Last night I slept in London, and was delayed there so long today by various calls and commissions that I did not reach Blackwater this evening till after dusk. Judging by my vague impressions of the place thus far, it is the exact opposite of Limmeridge. The house is situated on a dead flat, and seems to be shut in, almost suffocated to my North Country notions, by trees. I have seen nobody but the manservant who opened the door to me, and the housekeeper, a very civil person, who showed me the way to my own room and got me my tea. I have a nice little boudoir and bedroom at the end of a long passage on the 1st floor. The servants and some of the spare rooms are on the 2nd floor, and all the living rooms are on the ground floor. I have not seen one of them yet, and I know nothing about the house except that one wing of it is said to be 500 years old, that it had a moat around it once, and thus it gets its name of Blackwater from a lake in the park. 11 o'clock has just struck, in a ghostly and solemn manner, from a turret over the centre of the house, which I saw when I came in. A large dog has been woke, apparently by the sound of the bell, and is howling and yawning drearily somewhere round a corner. I hear echoing footsteps in the passages below, and the iron thumping of bolts and bars at the house door. The servants are evidently going to bed. Shall I follow their example? No, I am not half sleepy enough. Sleepy, did I say? I feel as if I should never close my eyes again. The bare anticipation of seeing that dear face and hearing that well-known voice tomorrow keeps me in a perpetual fever of excitement. If I only had the privileges of a man, I would order out Sir Percival's best horse instantly, and tear away at a night gallop eastward to meet the rising sun, a long, hard, heavy, ceaseless gallop of hours and hours, like the famous highwayman's ride to York. Being, however, nothing but a woman, condemned to patience, propriety, and petticoats for life, I must respect the housekeeper's opinions and try to compose myself in some feeble and feminine way. Reading is out of the question. I can't fix my attention on books. Let me try if I can write myself into sleepiness and fatigue. My journal has been very much neglected of late. What can I recall standing, as I now do, on the threshold of a new life, of persons and events, of chances and changes during the past 6 months, the long, weary, empty interval since Laura's wedding day? Walter Hartwright is uppermost in my memory, and he passes first in the shadowy procession of my absent friends. I received a few lines from him after the landing of the expedition in Honduras, written more cheerfully and hopefully than he has written yet. A month or 6 weeks later, I saw an extract from an American newspaper describing the departure of the adventurers on their inland journey. They were last seen entering a wild, primeval forest, each man with his rifle on his shoulder and his baggage at his back. Since that time, civilization has lost all trace of them. Not a line more have I received from Walter. Not a fragment of news from the expedition has appeared in any of the public journals. The same dense, disheartening obscurity hangs over the fate and fortunes of Anne Catherick and her companion, Mrs. Clements. Nothing whatever has been heard of either of them. Whether they are in the country or out of it, whether they are living or dead, no one knows. Even Sir Percival's solicitor has lost all hope and has ordered the useless search after the fugitives to be finally given up. Our good old friend Mr. Gilmore has met with a sad check in his active professional career. Early in the spring, we were alarmed by hearing that he had been found insensible at his desk, and that the seizure was pronounced to be an apoplectic fit. He had been long complaining of fullness and oppression in the head, and his doctor had warned him of the consequences that would follow his persistency in continuing to work, early and late, as if he was still a young man. The result now is that he has been positively ordered to keep out of his office for a year to come at least, and to seek repose of body and relief of mind by altogether changing his usual mode of life. The business is left, accordingly, to be carried on by his partner, and he is himself, at this moment, away in Germany, visiting some relations who are settled there in mercantile pursuits. Thus, another true friend and trustworthy adviser is lost to us. Lost, I earnestly hope and trust, for a time only. Poor Mrs. Vasey travelled with me as far as London. It was impossible to abandon her to solitude at Limmeridge after Laura and I had both left the house, and we have arranged that she is to live with an unmarried younger sister of hers who keeps a school at Clapham. She is to come here this autumn to visit her pupil, I might also say her adopted child. I saw the good old lady safe to her destination, and left her in the care of her relative, quietly happy at the prospect of seeing Laura again in a few months' time. As for Mr. Fairley, I believe I am guilty of no injustice if I describe him as being unutterably relieved by having the house clear of us women. The idea of his missing his niece is simply preposterous. He used to let months pass in the old times without attempting to see her, and in my case and Mrs. Vasey's, I take leave to consider his telling us both that he was half heartbroken at our departure to be equivalent to a confession that he was secretly rejoiced to get rid of us. His last caprice has led him to keep 2 photographers incessantly employed in producing sun pictures of all the treasures and curiosities in his possession. 1 complete copy of the collection of the photographs is to be presented to the Mechanics' Institution of Carlisle mounted on the finest cardboard with ostentatious red letter inscriptions underneath, Madonna and Child by Raphael, in the possession of Frederick Fairley, Esquire. Copper coin of the period of Tiglath-Pileser, in the possession of Frederick Fairley, Esquire. Unique Rembrandt etching, known all over Europe as the Smudge, from a printer's blot in the corner, which exists in no other copy, valued at 300 guineas, in the possession of Frederick Fairley, Esquire. Dozens of photographs of this sort, and all inscribed in this manner, were completed before I left Cumberland, and hundreds more remain to be done. With this new interest to occupy him, Mr. Fairley will be a happy man for months and months to come, and the two unfortunate photographers will share the social martyrdom which he has hitherto inflicted on his valet alone. So much for the persons and events which hold the foremost place in my memory. What next of the one person who holds the foremost place in my heart? Laura has been present to my thoughts all the while I have been writing these lines. What can I recall of her during the past 6 months before I close my journal for the night? I have only her letters to guide me, and on the most important of all the questions which our correspondents can discuss, every one of those letters leaves me in the dark. Does he treat her kindly? Is she happier now than she was when I parted with her on the wedding day? All my letters have contained these two inquiries, put more or less directly, now in one form and now in another, and all, on that point only, have remained without reply, or have been answered as if my questions merely related to the state of her health. She informs me over and over again that she is perfectly well, that travelling agrees with her, that she is getting through the winter, for the first time in her life, without catching cold. But not a word can I find anywhere which tells me plainly that she is reconciled to her marriage, and that she can now look back to the 22nd of December without any bitter feelings of repentance and regret. The name of her husband is only mentioned in her letters as she might mention the name of a friend who was travelling with them, and who had undertaken to make all the arrangements for the journey. Sir Percival has settled that we leave on such a day. Sir Percival has decided that we travel by such a road. Sometimes she writes Percival only, but very seldom. In 9 cases out of 10, she gives him his title. I cannot find that his habits and opinions have changed and coloured hers in any single particular. The usual moral transformation which is insensibly wrought in a young, fresh, sensitive woman by her marriage seems never to have taken place in Laura. She writes of her own thoughts and impressions, amid all the wonders she has seen, exactly as she might have written to someone else if I had been travelling with her instead of her husband. I see no betrayal anywhere of sympathy of any kind existing between them. Even when she wanders from the subject of her travels and occupies herself with the prospects that await her in England, her speculations are busied with her future as my sister, and persistently neglect to notice her future as Sir Percival's wife. In all this, there is no undertone of complaint to warn me that she is absolutely unhappy in her married life. The impression I have derived from our correspondence does not, thank God, lead me to any such distressing conclusion on that. I only see a sad torpor, an unchangeable indifference, when I turn my mind from her in the old character of a sister, and look at her through the medium of her letters in the new character of a wife. In other words, it is always Laura Fairley who has been writing to me for the last 6 months, and never Lady Glyde. The strange silence which she maintains on the subject of her husband's character and conduct she preserves with almost equal resolution in the few references which her later letters contain to the name of her husband's bosom friend, Count Fosco. For some unexplained reason, the Count and his wife appear to have changed their plans abruptly at the end of last autumn, and to have gone to Vienna instead of going to Rome, at which latter place Sir Percival had expected to find them when he left England. They only quitted Vienna in the spring and travelled as far as the Tyrol to meet the bride and bridegroom on their homeward journey. Laura writes readily enough about the meeting with Madame Fosco, and assures me that she has found her aunt so much changed for the better, so much quieter and so much more sensible as a wife than she was as a single woman, that I shall hardly know her again when I see her here. But on the subject of Count Fosco, who interests me infinitely more than his wife, Laura is provokingly circumspect and silent. She only says that he puzzles her, and that she will not tell me what her impression of him is until I have seen him and formed my own opinion first. This, to my mind, looks ill for the Count. Laura has preserved, far more perfectly than most people do in later life, the child's subtle faculty of knowing a friend by instinct. And if I am right in assuming that her first impression of Count Fosco has not been favourable, I, for one, am in some danger of doubting and distrusting that illustrious foreigner before I have so much as set eyes on him. But patience, patience. This uncertainty, and many uncertainties more, cannot last much longer. Tomorrow will see all my doubts in a fair way of being cleared up sooner or later. 12 o'clock has struck, and I have just come back to close these pages after looking out at my open window. It is a still, sultry, moonless night. The stars are dull and few. The trees that shut out the view on all sides look dimly black and solid in the distance, like a great wall of rock. I hear the croaking of frogs, faint and far off, and the echoes of the great clock hum in the airless calm long after the strokes have ceased. I wonder how Blackwater Park will look in the daytime. I don't altogether like it by night. Thank you all so much for joining me. More tomorrow, 5 Pacific at Fireside Reading on Instagram. And I will continue, but keep an eye on the Fireside Reading story in case when we get to next week, things change on the fly. Until I see you all again tomorrow, everyone, please stay very, very well. Good night.